This is for English 201, Caribbean Literature, the 28th of May. In continuation on our work on form and content in terms of all our readings so far, including the stories and the essays. Okay, some of us have some hesitation, it seems, when it comes to differentiating between form and structure on the one hand and content and theme on the other hand. So, thank you. Can we then go back in time? Yes or no? Okay. So let's go back in time. When we're looking at structure, we're looking at the how. When we're looking at content, we're looking at what. So the structure tells us how the content or the major ideas and themes are revealed. And remember, as George Lukács told us, mature writers have basically one content, one theme that they present and represent to us over and over in different packaging, different structures. And what does he say that major theme is? It is what? An attempt to answer the question, what is man? What is humanity? Yes? What's human nature? And by extension, we may add, what is human society then? Since we don't live in a vacuum, we live in a society. Yes? With each other, whether we like it or not. Yes? Okay. And so various methods then can be used to do what? Excuse me. To create question answers to this timeless, probably unanswerable question. Yes? What is man? What is humanity? And obviously, writers will choose different directions to establish what? Different points of view. Because in other words, one writer may see human beings as products of society, products of poverty, products of culture, maybe even products of historical factors like slavery. Yes? And so that writer would present the answer to the question, what is man, what is humanity, in one way. Then another writer may see human beings as what? Highly individualistic creatures, yes? All of them representing a different and unique experience. That writer will present a different answer to the question, what is man? But the point is, whatever the individual themes are, mature writers, according to Lukács, are going to keep giving us different insights into human nature and human behavior. Could we say, for instance, that a writer like Naipaul gives us a number of quite disturbing and thought-provoking answers to that question, what is human nature, what is humanity? Yes or no? Yes. He gives us, according to one essay I've been reading, some disturbing versions of what a woman is, or what a Caribbean woman is. When we look at the archetypes of the sex goddess, yes, the brown sugar, yes, the manipulative vampiric mother figure like Laura, yes, the dualistic people. When we look at these archetypes, we are left with negative insights into womanhood. And on the other hand, there is the much neglected, much taken for granted mother figure, the boy's mother, who stays in the background, but in the end is the only stabilizing force as a woman in his journey. Yes or no? So in other words, different writers will give us different insights into human nature, but it's still the basic content. I told you that one of the musts to read in your collection of poems was, of course, For My Mother, May I Inherit Half Her Strength, by Lorna Goodison. We read it, yes? Please tell me you did. And do we get a first-person narrative voice again? coming directly from the poet. Yes? I write this in my 30th year, the year to discard all stereotypes and assumptions. My mother loved my father. That I can tell you, the way I can tell you the sky is up there and the ground is down there. Is that basically how she introduces her topic? Yes or no? Of course. But are we looking at also a first-person narrator, which takes us back to structure? As in the case of the boy narrator in Miguel Street, are we aware that voice is probably number one on our list of influential structures or forms? Yes or no? Yes. And did we speak about two basic levels of voices? Of course. We have the I narrator, yes, or the first person narrator, or the first person narrative voice. And as we've said previously, this is a voice that often hooks readers in various media. Whether it's a novel of 500 pages, like Herman Melville's Moby Dick, which begins, "Call me Ishmael," yes? Or whether it is F. Scott Fitzgerald's The Great Gatsby, where we have an I narrator who absolutely bonds with his soul brother, the get-rich-quick Mr. Gatsby, but who tells us, in my younger days, my father used to say, be careful how you judge people. Don't judge them too fast. Because remember, everybody hasn't had the advantages you have had. Does that one hook us right away? Because this is the voice of the privileged, educated, but not arrogant. Yes? The truly understanding, the truly intelligent storyteller. Yes? And then, of course, we have the first-person narrator who introduces the film version of Charles Dickens's huge novel, Great Expectations, who says, I will tell the story as I remember it, not as it happened. Pointing out the difference between the power of memory and the reality, the historical reality. But we're aware then, as we look back at structures, that voice is one of the most important structures that we have to pay attention to. And that voice textures our reactions to the work. Do we all agree? It hooks us, but it textures our reactions as well. Remember the boy narrator in Miguel Street hooks us, the child in us. We enjoy his enthusiasm. Laura had 7 children by 8 different men. She must have held a world record. Beat that. And the child in us laughs with him. But the adult in us says, this cannot end well. Exactly. So child narrators often have that added oomph, namely, they hook both the child and the adult reader and listener in us. Okay, so let us then look at voice. We're looking at traditionally the first-person narrator, and tell me about that. The first-person narrative voice says I. It is subjective. It's one person's opinion only. Potentially biased, because it's only one person's opinion. But, it is what? It's very engaged and engaging. It's hard to resist a first-person narrator. The first-person narrator has this way of hooking us. Yes? Okay. It is intense and intimate. And what else? Engaged and engaging. The first-person narrators hook us. Now, on the other hand, what do we have, better late than never, what do we have on the other hand? We have the third-person narrator, yes, or the third-person narrative voice, and it is very different, yes, from the first-person narrator, yes. It is as objective as it is humanly possible to be. It is comprehensive, wide-ranging, yes? Mhm. But what else? It's emotionally distant. Yes? Emotionally disengaged. This is, in other words, then you put newspaper reporter telling us how your neighbor stabbed her husband to death at 3 o'clock in the morning on Saturday night or Sunday morning. Yes? You will tell the story. I heard this terrible scream. I didn't know what to do. My mother said, call the ambulance, call the police. That's your first person narrator. The police story on it will be, at 3:30 on such and such a morning, Mr. So-and-so was found dead in his driveway with a knife in his heart. Mrs. So-and-so is being held to assist in this investigation. Is that the way the police often put it? This person is the suspect. They are going to assist in this investigation. Okay, it is what? The third person narrator has that emotional distancing that often seems, what? Very comprehensive, but doesn't have the intensity or the intimacy of a first-person voice. Now, are these very, very important structural elements that do, in fact, have an impact on our level of response and engagement? You bet. Okay, when we move from voice, then, what else do we think of that goes along with voice in real life? Tone. Do the voices used also connect with the tone? Of course. In real life, yes, when we're communicating, do our voice and our tone go together? Yes or no? Of course. So we're thinking of tone and going back to English 101 and English 102. Yes? When we're thinking of tone, are we thinking of the emotional dimension of the communication? Of course. Think about one of the closing statements near the end of Miguel Street. What is it the boy tells us? When Hat went to jail, a part of me had died. Is there a very grim, serious tone of loss, but also of closure there? Yes. So in other words, the emotional message behind tone is very, very, very important, isn't it? Yes or no? Of course it is. Okay. And along with tone, then, do we get another thing that we take for granted in everyday communication? What is it? Perspective. What do we mean by perspective? I tell you how this man was killed, stabbed to death by his wife at 3:30 on Sunday morning. And I tell you, he was always drunk and he was always beating up this woman, and my mother was always calling the police, but this woman somehow couldn't leave him. Yeah? And he was always threatening to kill her if she left him, and oh gosh, it was awful. Every Saturday night this thing went on, right? Does my perspective on it as a woman come across to you in the disapproval with which I speak of this man? I'm not sorry for him. It is clear. I tell you, he was lying in a pool of blood and the wife was crying, and I was so sorry for her. Do I give you a perspective of disapproval? Of course. Yes? When the little boy says, Laura must have held a world record. 7 children for 8 different men. Beat that! Is his perspective clearly that of an innocent child? Yes or no? So you see how the tone, it's an enthusiastic, innocent tone. Does it give us the perspective, the point of view of the child? So our perspective, or what some books call point of view, are these two related and they are related to voice and tone. Yes or no? Yes. And do they all affect our response level and our engagement level? When we hear about Laura, as we said, the adult in us hears about this woman who has 7 children by 8 different men and no visible means of support. The adult in us says, really? This cannot end well. And when the boy tells us that a hat says, it's what they does always do. They swim out and out until they're too tired and they can't swim anymore. About Lorna's suicide. The adult in us says, really? You expect me to believe that? In other words, we respond with a certain amount of disbelief. Yes, irony. Okay, contradiction. All right, so are we then aware how voice connects to all of these other structural ingredients? Yes or no? Okay, and am I talking too fast? Do we need to slow down a little bit? Mm-hmm. Okay, then of course, is there this other thing, content or theme? As we said earlier on, when we're looking at content or theme, we're looking basically at investigations of life, aren't we? The French critics call them human universalities. Investigations of what? The human condition. And different writers will show human nature in different ways. But have we said, for instance, that if we look at the Caribbean archetypes with which I have tried to organize the materials and the characters and everything on this course, do these archetypes, as we got some nice new typed copies last time, yes? Time before last. Are these archetypes, in actual fact, thematic umbrellas under which we can place the themes? Yes or no? Of course. If you think about it clearly, let's go back to our list of archetypes. Does anybody have your list with you? Yes or no? We say that these are inherited from roles of Caribbean or enslaved or black men and women of the Negro race, and we know the Negro race covers all different ethnic variations or images. Yeah. Are we looking at roles that were inherited from slavery? We call them the scarring inheritances of slavery. There is the black man as the stud, the provider of sperm, the work machine. There is the black woman as the breeder, because all babies that were born of slave women were born slaves as well. It didn't matter who the father was, even if the father was the slave owner. You understand? And remember that this was not consensual sex. This was the rape of the black woman's fertility and body to increase the human capital of baby slaves. Full stop. It's that simple. They were born slaves. Okay? We talked about Frederick Douglass and so on, didn't we? And his autobiography as a child of a slave owner and his mother a slave, yes? And you think you could? Okay. What else do we notice? We notice the fragmented black family, yes or no? Thank you. And why was the black family fragmented as an aspect of slavery? Because the family is itself what? A source of moral support. It's supposed to be anyway, yes? And moral support can help people to what? Rebel. So what do? Fragment the family. Frederick Douglass, in his autobiography of an ex-slave, tells us, Douglass. Remember, we had it on the board. We talked about it. It's an autobiography of the type like 12 Years a Slave, that big movie. And if you read it, you get the true story, human story behind the experience of slavery. It will make you cry, but it makes you see, a certain aspect of history that is so important to see. Okay, in other words, fragment the black family, and you help to fragment the individual. If we're thinking of that as a thematic umbrella, does that relate directly to Laura's behavior? Is Laura acting out the role of the black woman as breeder? But also, does she show us an aspect of the fragmented black family? Laura actually does not, is shown by Naipaul. Remember, Laura didn't jump out of the pages of the book into real life. Do we have to keep referring to the writer? Naipaul shows us that Laura actually doesn't want a man in her life. She isn't concerned with whether or not her children have a father. She throws out Nathaniel, who dares to want to stick around. How dare he? Yes? Okay. She beats him up and throws him out. So this fragmented black family then is the subject of many, many sociological critiques and essays and psychological studies, etc. But does it find its roots in slavery? Are we also looking at an important thematic umbrella? But the question I wanted you to answer me is, are these archetypes able to be seen as both themes that keep recurring throughout all the works we read? But can we also see them as structural little umbrellas under which we can conveniently place the major messages of the work, or the different works? Yes or no? If we look at irony, for instance, and dualism, we see these in Laura, Hart, and Mrs. Herrera regularly. Yes? But are they are themes. They're aspects of life and human behavior. They are themes, concepts from human life that these characters are used to reveal to us. Who could be more dualistic than Mrs. Herrera? Yes? She's both the victim, the abused woman, and the abuser. She's both the brown sugar, yes? And what else? The vampiric, abusive wife, yes? In other words, she almost is a nurturer to Tony, the boyfriend. She's worried about whether Tony will have enough food when she leaves. The boy's mother says to her, this is a grown-up man, you know. He's not, in other words, he's not your baby. But at the same time, is she the abuser to her husband? Of course. Oh, my husband is like a child, you know. If I go back tomorrow, he'll take me back. So are we noticing then that things like other archetypes like dualism and irony, they're structures, of course, but are they also themes at the same time? Themes as in what? Insights into aspects of human nature. What is man? What is humanity? Remember Lukács's key questions. Does this make sense? So tell me then some more of the major themes that we've seen so far, not just structures, themes, they could be archetypes that we've seen so far, not just in Miguel Street, but in our poems. And of course, don't forget Professor Nettleford's essay, Young Bulls on the Loose. Excuse me. Yes. For my mother, may I inherit half her strength? We're looking at the fragmented black family. Are we looking at the disappearing, or is it the disappeared father figure? Yes or no? Which version of the black man are we looking at? The stud, the non-father. Yes? What else are we seeing? Are we seeing the Caribbean woman as victim? Yes or no? Yes. Is she worst of all victim of her own love for this man who actually doesn't love anybody? Yes or no? Victim for different reasons. Thank you. Tell us more, Cleve.
Yeah, unlike the other story with Miguel Street where they're victims of people hurting them or whatever. She's more a victim of emotional.
In fact, thank you, Cleve. Unlike Miguel Street, where we saw women as victims of poverty, abject, real poverty, or victims of other people.
It shows some strength too because she tries not to seem like a victim.
She tries not to, the mother tries not to seem like a victim. She shows some strength. Is she the earth mother? Yes. But is she the real, true earth mother figure like the boy's mother? She shows in Miguel Street. She shows strength. But you make an important point, Cleve, when you say, but she is a victim of her own emotions. Excuse me. Her own emotional attachment to a man who clearly has no idea what love or marriage or family life or any of these things should be. Yes or no? Okay. So, any other themes? Definitely the fragmented black family. Excuse me. Sorry. Excuse me a minute. It's from upstairs. Okay. Hello, yes? Sorry, I have to call you back. Okay? Sorry. Sorry. Okay. What else are we looking at in terms of themes? Is that a memorable poem? Some people told me they had done it in high school and they never forgot it. Are we looking at, tell me, ideas about life, themes, the result of a marriage between people who have different values? Does the mother value true family life, nurturing, fidelity, faithfulness, love? Yes or no? Are those her values? Are these values in direct, painful conflict with the values of her husband, who seems to believe that manhood means, as Nettleford put it, honing his sexual prowess to be of as much service as possible to as many different heifers as possible? Yes? Are we looking at the painful results of conflicting values in, worse yet, in a marriage and of what should have been a family life? Any other themes, my friends? Talk to me. Tell me, what other themes are there? They are obvious. Talk to me.
The irrationality of love.
The irrationality of love. Cleve, you said this mother figure is a bit like, she's kind of like a victim of her emotions, yes? You say it's the irrationality of love. Are you both talking about the same basic theme that Goodison, the author, seems to be trying to investigate? Yes. The irrationality of love. And does that also then take us into another important theme, but also a structure and a tone, which is what? Irony. Irony. Contradiction. Yes, the awareness of contradiction. This woman was training to be a teacher. The man impregnates her. She's pregnant even at the wedding. Yes, that is obvious. She then earns money by being a dressmaker. Remember, the Goodison tells us that the first word she learned to read was the word singer, sewing machine. I don't know if your mothers and grandmothers and older generation people in your families always had the Singer sewing machines. You've seen Singer sewing machines in the stores and so on today. Singer, have you? You've seen sewing machines?
Or those are ones that you like slide and close.
Yeah. And it used to be first that in my mother's and grandma's age, you had a wheel that you turn, and then it had a thing that you press with your foot, all kinds of things. But Singer, they were often black with gold patterns on the side of them, and the writing of the word Singer in gold print. Yeah. And does this kind of strike a bell of memory in our heads? She says the first word she learned to read was Singer. And what else? What else do we notice? This woman could sew. She was in training to be a teacher. Yes. She was of a middle class, rural family background. But this was not the age of the contraceptive pill, my friends. If women lack control of their fertility, do they lack control of their lives? Yes or no? Yes. Okay. These were the days of our grandmas when women had 10 children. Even in marriage, it's not that they were like Laura with 8 children by 7 different men. You understand? Okay. So she learns what's the narration of the story is a very ironic and sad narration. She becomes a dressmaker. Now, is it a saleable skill? Sewing, of course. And what does Goodison tell us? She taught us to read. She'd start in judgments on our arguments and our quarrels. She cooked while she sewed. She sewed while she did this. She sewed while she did that. She was always sewing. Is she the breadwinner in the family? Are we looking at the Caribbean woman archetype as the nurturer and the Amazon, and she's a strong person? She's too strong for her own good, isn't she? Is that why the poem tells us, for my mother may I inherit half and only half of her strength? Yes or no?
Yeah.
Thank you. So are we looking at an implicit irony in the title of the poem? Why only half? Because she was too strong for her own good, as you put it, Cleve. She was, in a sense, her own victim, or her own worst victim. She was a man's victim, but was she also her own victim of her strength, and as you put it there, her love for him, the irrationality of her love? She actually really needed therapy, didn't she? If she were living in today's age, she could have just turned on the TV and gotten one of the TV therapists. What's Oprah's friend's name? Dr. Phil? Yes? And, these TV therapists who tell us how to get our lives under control right now. Okay. I'm just joking. What other themes are we looking at? We're looking at irony. You're telling us the irrationality of love. I would put love in quotation marks. Anything else? Is it also the theme of women as victims of their times, their eras, ERAS? The time and the place in which they are born. Victims of what? Their fertility. Anything else, my friends? I hate sitting here talking to myself. Sorry? Sorry? Those are the main ones. Okay. What else? What about the man? Do we see the theme as the man as the disappearing father figure, the stud? Yes? Mm-hmm. Is he very, very much the aging bull? He's no longer the young bull, but does he retain the behaviors of the young bull? Yes or no? Okay, thank you. All right. So are we seeing the archetypes and the themes working together all the time? Okay. Can we have a look then at going back to the Nettleford essay? What did we notice there? First, let's go back to basics when it comes to structure. What voice is being used? Talk to me, people.
Um,
Is it a first person narrator who says I? The third person voice. He doesn't say I. Does he attempt, like all third person voices, to give us as full and comprehensive a picture of the subject as possible? But to stick up in, my friends, he tells us, he makes the concession, which is a part of argument, going back to English 102, remember? He makes the concession to the opposing views. He says Professor Nettleford, yes, not Nettleford, Miller, talks about basically the female-headed household and this idea that young black men or black men are being marginalized in the Caribbean society, surrounded as they are by women in too many important positions, these strong matriarchal positions. Women are teachers, women are lawyers, women are doctors, women are bankers, women are mamas, they're grandmamas. How dare they? Yes? You can't live with all these women, but you can't shoot them either. Good grief. Um, um, is that perhaps Miller's concern? Too many strong women, problems. Okay, he makes a concession, doesn't he? Miller says this. And he concedes also, it is true. Many of us have been what? Fathered by our mamas and grandmamas, and I would add older sisters and aunties, yes? And so on. Yes or no? Okay. And he says, but never in the past, we didn't see the levels of criminality, drug dealing, alienation, and so on, just general wrongdoing among young black men today in the Caribbean that we see today in the Caribbean. We didn't see it. So can we blame the disappeared or the disappearing father figure for this behavior? And he talks about the shift from the rural society and economy where there were always jobs for young men to do, fishing, learning to fish, building boats, fixing boats, going to sea, building houses. And we're seeing a shift now to the urban society and economy, where, of course, young men are finding that without skills like engineering, without skills like computer knowledge, ICT, yes? Without such skills, or even being lawyers and doctors, engineers and surveyors, they can't earn a living. But is there a factor, my friends, that Nettleford has excluded?
yes,
What?
not sure.
But think about it. He talks about these, criminal tendencies among the young men. I mean, let's face it, folks. I told you this perhaps, that I had been teaching these prison officers last term for the Civil Service College, and how many of these mature professional men told me that the vast majority of the males in prison under 40 were people who either had never met their fathers, never known their fathers, or had never had a serious, mature conversation with a mature man whom they could trust and respect. So the missing father figure is real as a problem causing criminality. But are there some other factors in Caribbean society, and you might say American influence society, that these people have not talked about? Nettleford mentions drug dealing,
Abuse.
abuse of,
The, like in family.
abuse of young men
Yeah.
by family members.
Yeah.
Mhm. Okay, so they don't mention the fact that many young men in the Caribbean have actually been victims of physical and or sexual abuse, often by family members, visitors, trusted visitors to the home, older cousins. Thank you. He doesn't mention that. What else is not mentioned? Does the music industry have a great influence on young men in the Caribbean today? And is the music industry often somehow connected with the drug in the illegal drug business? Yes or no? Yes. So it's not just drug dealing that we're looking at in terms of these criminal tendencies and patterns. Talk to me about the music industry and its connections with illegal drugs, sales and use. Hmm.
A lot of the musical artists or rappers and stuff per se, like they've grown up on the streets. Also, a lot of them.
The street culture, if you want to call it that,
They were raised by that. A lot of them were raised in that kind of
the gangster culture, yes.
selling like drugs and stuff like that.
Selling drugs, using drugs. What's the name of this guy who told this story on CNN? How he grew up in that way. But then he reached, was it 50 cents?
50%.
Was it 50 cents? But then I don't know what happened. Was he shot or something? And then he had this moment of awakening, when he realized he couldn't continue to live like this. So we're looking at the gangster rap, the rap music. What else? The reggae music, popular music, and the popular music industry. Are these somehow intertwined with a glamorous version of living on the streets, selling and using drugs, and this concept that says getting rich or die trying, getting rich fast or dying trying? Okay, so are we also looking at glorification of fast money?
Yep.
It doesn't matter how you make the money as long as it comes fast and it's plenty. Okay. Now, are these powerful messages that are sent out to young men and young women constantly through the media, constantly? Yes or no?
Yeah.
Think of all the movies, DVDs, and so on we've seen. These music DVDs you see on TV, right? Which show black men as drug dealers driving whatever is the latest super expensive vehicle, covered with gold chains and rings, yes? And often with a gun somewhere visible on their hip or in their pockets, yes? And accompanied by women who are basically dressed like prostitutes. Now, is that version of the black man or the black woman a very, very popular, commonplace version? But it's also connected with fast money. Are we looking then at degraded values? Yes or no? Yes. And are these degraded values part of what we might add to Nettleford's essay if we had to add a paragraph to it? Degraded values that are disseminated by popular media in the Caribbean. Get rich quick or die trying. The black man as a hoodlum of some kind, but a hoodlum who makes plenty money fast. The black woman as a prostitute of some kind. Yes or no? And fashion as here today, gone tomorrow, but very, very flashy and expensive. You know what I mean by here today, gone tomorrow fashions. Yes? You have people who are living in a ghetto who have to wear this Dolce & Gabbana shirt, silk shirt. You understand what I mean? You've seen it? With the gold, and they're covered in gold jewelry, but they don't have a roof over their head. Yes or no? Okay. So if we had to add a paragraph then to Nettleford's essay, would it make sense to discuss the dissemination of false values through the Caribbean, the media in the Caribbean? Yes or no? And these false values have to do with what? The glorification of money, materialism, getting rich fast. Thank you. Okay, then if there is one poem where we actually get a critique of materialism and the substitution of materialism for quality time and family life and real nurturing, what poem would that be?
My Father Inside.
My Father Inside. Thank you. And if we're looking at that poem, My Father Inside, let's go back to it. What do we notice? What do we notice, my friends? Dear, can you just hand these out when you come back, please? I don't know if you've got these yet. These are reminders for better essay writing, yes? Okay. Better project presentation. Thank you. An oldie but a goodie. Please add it to your portfolio. Can we continue? Cleve had reached to My Father Inside, and we're talking about the fact that Nettleford could have added, if I were going to add, thank you, a paragraph to Nettleford's essay, I would have added a paragraph on the dissemination of very false values, materialism, crass materialism, yes? The images of the black man as the drug dealer, the successful rich drug dealer, and the black woman as the prostitute attached to him, yes? That this dissemination of this version of people comes to us through the media in the Caribbean regularly, yes? And it's part of the problem of the young bull who slides into crime so easily. Yes? I would have added that. Okay, now we're moving on. You had to leave. We're moving on to My Father Inside. And I asked the question, which poem was the poem where we saw this glorification of material things and the substitution of material things for family life and for real nurturing and love? And somebody said, or somebody said, My Father Inside. Okay, tell me about that poem if you've read it. In particular, what do we notice about voice in it? Could I borrow yours, please? Yeah. What do we notice, thank you, about this poem? Look on my new truck. It has 4 lights and a steering wheel, a driver, and a battery. And look, it can drive by itself. My father bought it for me in Miami. My father buy me plenty pretty things when he goes to Miami every time. It's nice. but I prefer my own. It has a string and I can pull it anywhere I want. I can load it with stone and sand and dirt and anything. My father make it for me for my birthday. Sure. It's a piece of old board with 4 polish pan wheels. It can't even move by itself. Your father should buy one like mine that my father buy from America. My father can buy better than your father, and I don't have to wait for my birthday for no fool old truck. My father is a buyer man every day, and he has more money than your father. My father have a nicer car than your father. My father have a better house than your father. My father taller than your father. My father bigger than your father. My father stronger than your father. My father better looking than your father. My father can beat up your father. And so on and so forth. Yeah? My father can beat up your father. My father richer than your father. My father is inside. Where's your father? Flip over here. Did you read it?
I read it. I thought it ended there.
Oh, no.
What did it?
It's here. What does the first little boy, the one who has the poor but present father, clinch the argument with? My father is in my life. He's inside my house right now. I bet you can't tell me where your father is. He's in Miami. He's been Beverly Hills. Where is he? You don't know. And he has his expensive cell phone turned off too. You can't even get to him. My father inside. He's inside my house and he's with me. He's inside my life. Where is your father? Is it an extremely ironic ending to this? Yes or no? Okay. Here we are. What are we noticing? Did we all find it? Yeah. What do we notice? Would you share,
So wait,
Cleve, for me, please? Thank you. Yes.
for the last part, when you say my father inside, where's your father? That's somebody else talking to the boy.
No, that we said that is the first child. That's the child of the poor boy, of the poor man.
I mean, yeah, that what I mean. That what I mean.
It's 2 speakers.
Yeah, I know. That what I meant. If they were talking to the, if you were talking to the one that said that my father by me all the time.
Oh, yeah. It's a conversation. It's a conversation between the 2 boys. One it has the poor but caring, involved father. He's not just inside the house. He's inside his son's life.
Made it.
Yeah?
He made it. The truck.
He made the truck, he probably made the house too. It's not a fancy house, but it's a home. Yes? He's inside his son's life. The other man, the rich man, substitutes material expensive things, no doubt strategically timed expensive gifts. For what? For quality time and for nurturing. It's 2 boys. They're in a conversation. Structurally speaking, what do we notice?
Okay. So, sorry. For the first 3 paragraphs, it alternates each person, and then for the last one, it alternates each line.
No, the first verse,
Huh? No.
is the rich man's son. Look on my new truck.
Yeah, I understand.
The second one is the poor man's son.
Yeah, the third one.
The third and the fourth are the rich man's son, who is getting more and more hostile, arrogant, and aggressive by the minute. And then the last 2 lines, my father inside. Where's your father? Is that then the voice of the poor man's son? Yes or no? Okay. Now what on the board that I have put there as a list would be relevant, structurally speaking, to this poem? I need to hear from you.
Engage.
It's time to talk. You. Yeah, you.
Can you say the question again, please? Well, I mean, forward. But what does she mean, like voice, or does she mean?
Anything.
Okay. The kids are. Okay, the kids are engaged and engaging, I think, because they're going into their lives. They're not just like, and they are potentially biased too because they're talking about their own father.
Yes, but so what element are we looking at? What structural element hits us first?
I think it's intense.
The intensity of, are we looking at voice?
I think it's the tone more.
But remember, voice and tone go together. But does it really hit us that we have here two voices?
Yeah.
Yes or no?
Yeah.
And do these two voices, you said they're engaged, they're intense, they're engaging.
I mean, more intense in terms of the rich man's son.
Oh yeah, the rich man's son needs to overcompensate, so he's aggressive, very
Like
intense.
it's kind of a competition thing.
Yes, of course it is. It's a competition. So are we looking at what types of voices then? What types of narration, of narrative voices? First person narration. Are we looking at two first person narrative voices which have matching, which have their own tones? As you said, it's natural they would be potentially biased. They're talking about their fathers. But what is it that we notice? It says it there. Two first-person narrative voices with very opposed values. Are we looking at very different values? The rich man's son has absorbed the values of materialism, that things are what matter, not quality time or emotional bonding,
Whether he's there or not.
whether he's there or not. But will the rich man's son come to a time when he realizes that his father has been conning him and manipulating him with money and things? And is that when the rich man's son starts to rebel and give daddy a lot of trouble and embarrassment? Because daddy, the rich man, is soon going to find his son arrested by the police at 3 o'clock in the morning. Yes or no?
Generalization.
And in prison, it will be very embarrassing to the rich man to know that his son is getting a police record. Yes, which will not allow him to be admitted into the expensive school, the high-class school that the rich man was planning to put him into. Yes or no? Have we heard this story before, my friends?
Yeah.
I think so.
Very general story.
It's a very real story too, isn't it? Quite commonplace. Okay, tell me more about this poem. Are we looking at opposed values, opposed lifestyles, and opposed models of manhood and fathering? Yes or no? Are those the major themes? Yes or no? I just hate sitting here talking to myself.
Especially in manhood, because you can.
Sorry?
Especially in manhood, because you can see the type of
Mm-hmm.
men they would grow up to be as well.
Thank you. It's especially about opposed versions of manhood, because these are the types of men that these boys are going to grow up into as a result of what? The models and examples they've been given. Would you agree? Yes or no? Okay. I'm going to stop sitting here talking to myself. I'm going to just sit here in silence sometimes and see who is going to, do some talking. Okay. So structurally speaking then, is there anything else that we have talked about as both structure and theme. It's a tone as a structure, but it's a theme. It points out contradictions in life, contradictions of all kind. What would that be?
Irony.
Thank you. Aren't we looking at irony? Is there immense irony in terms of contradictory values appearing here? Yes or no? Mm-hmm. And is the irony reflected in the tones, in the final tone? My father inside. Where's your father? You get the point. You don't know where he is. And you don't know where he is because he doesn't love you. Okay, and he doesn't really care about you. He just slaps down some dollars from time to time. Okay. Anything else? Are we noticing how the dualism is there with the irony, the doubleness? Two different versions of fathering, as you said, Cleve. Two different versions of manhood that are going to emerge over time from these two different versions of fathering. Two very different value systems. Are we all together on this? Do we see then how the structures and the themes or the contents actually work together? And which archetypes are we looking at here? The disappearing father figure. Maybe even the stud. Maybe the rich man is a stud. Maybe he might have this child over here and one in Miami and one in Beverly Hills, somewhere else. Yes. He just spends the money, on all of them and keeps moving on to the next woman. Yes? Okay. Is there any other? So are we looking at dualism and irony as well, as archetypes and as structures and as themes? Yes or no? Okay. This is why I say to you, you must read these stories, these things at home. Get a chance to digest them. Yes? Okay. Are we also looking at another powerful one? Yes? This one, of course, my father inside used first-person narrators. Are we looking at, in that same book, can you share for me, please, that same booklet, one that uses the all-seeing, comprehensive, third-person narrator. The third-person narrator who sees everything and knows everything. The critics call it the omniscient third-person narrator. All-seeing, all-knowing, yes? Mm-hmm. Sees everything. This one is very different. Now think in terms of what kind of woman would be the subject of this message. Are we getting cold now? Can we just open for a while, please? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Thank you. Okay. Now, are we going to pay attention to the tone? Yes. And thank you. The narrative voice. This is an all-seeing, all-knowing, what the books call omniscient, third-person narrative voice. Yes? Okay. The poem is called Love After Love. And it was written by Derek Walcott. Yes? Another Nobel Prize winner for literature from the Caribbean. Oh, maybe we have to close again because noise. Sorry. Okay. And are we looking at values again? Yes or no? Thank you.
Miss you, cool. You can just turn the AC up like this time.
Where is it at?
Where?
No, I mean, where was it
It was
at?
out 6 days.
Oh, that's why. Thank you. Okay. Now this one is called Love After Love, yes? And let's pay attention to it. Again, are we looking at voices? And are we looking at values? I ask you to think about what are the values for womanhood and for women's well-being and survival. What are the values that are part of the theme of this poem?
Self-love.
Okay. Positive self-love, not narcissism. Not the narcissism of the so-called beautiful young man in The Golden Wife.
No.
Self-esteem. The time will come when, with elation, you will greet yourself arriving at your own door. Greet yourself arriving in your own mirror, and each will smile at the other's welcome and say, "Sit here, eat." You will love again the stranger who was yourself and say, "Sit here, eat." Give wine, give bread. Give back your heart to itself, to the stranger who has loved you all your life, the stranger whom you ignored for another, the stranger who knows you by heart. Take down the love letters from the bookshelves, the photographs, the desperate notes. Peel your own image from the mirror. Sit. Feast on your life. Give wine. Give bread. Give back your heart to itself. Feast on your life. You can't find it?
It's like it cuts off.
It's right here. We said it was right here beside
But
in the book. It's not there.
were you reading it over? Were you repeating at the end? Why?
It's 4 verses, but I've rearranged some of the words. It's, you have it?
The first feast on your life.
Like, she says it again. Should we
Oh,
read
should
it
you say
again?
that?
Oh, okay.
Feast on your life. Your life, nobody else's. Which version you were moving so much, unfortunately, that you weren't really listening?
I was listening, but I thought you read something else.
No. The trick is just listen. Yes? What is it what are the messages that this man is flashing to us?
He's telling you to love yourself finally after being in love with somebody else.
Who didn't love you? Is he giving us the major theme of positive love, self-love, self-esteem? Yes or no?
Yes.
Self-esteem sounds like, something you'll hear about on, I don't know, maybe Oprah Winfrey's show or Dr. Phil's show. But is it true that if we respect, it's actually high up on Maslow's hierarchy of needs? You've heard about that in psychology, haven't you? It's near the top. Self-esteem and respect as major needs of all human beings. But is it true that if we actually respect ourselves, we have self-esteem, there are some things we will not do? Yes or no?
Yes.
Yes.
You just said self-esteem is something like from Dr. Phil. Or
No, I'm saying it may sound that way.
No, but the whole thing sounds like that, like they're like being spoken to by someone like that.
Or it could be coming from a psychologist.
Because,
You mean the voice?
right, it sounds like someone that's forgotten about themselves, like they've been focused on someone else for so long.
Yes. Interestingly, when we shared this one with a group for speech some years ago, a mature lady in that group said, when I said, "And what does this bring to mind?" And this lady said, well, maybe somebody who had been caring for a loved one who had a terminal disease. And maybe for years, or months, had been putting everything she had into caring for this person. And now maybe the person has gone, and she suddenly has space and time in her life to what? Pay attention to herself. Is this a message that a lady we've met in one of these poems or one of our readings needed to hear? Positive self-love, self-esteem. Feast on your life. Which of the characters that we've met so far, the female characters, needed to hear this story, this message? Laura, thank you. Tell us why.
Because she didn't love herself.
Because Laura did not love herself. What makes you think that?
She had low self-esteem
She had low self-esteem. Why do we say that?
because she gave herself up to 8 different men,
Is-
not 7.
Is it the numbers that matter, the 8 different men, or
Because
Does
she
it not
kept giving
coincide
herself
with
up to
self-esteem?
people.
because she kept doing what? She had sex with 8 different men. Is that the issue? What's the real issue?
No, the issue is that
She was giving it.
she did not respect herself enough
She just.
to be.
How can we put it?
The problem with that is, even if they pay it,
Yeah?
like she just kept giving.
Is it about sex, or is it about something much bigger than sex?
I think you have in mind what the bigger thing is.
Values?
Values, thanks, Cleve.
What values?
Self-value, thank you. In other words, does this go way beyond what Laura does with her body?
Okay, yeah.
But let me ask you the question. Is there a connection between what we do with our bodies and what we do with our lives?
In what sense?
I'm asking,
I think so.
yeah. Is there a connection between what we do with our bodies and what we do with our lives?
Yes, because your body is a part of your life.
Yes. And did Laura understand that? And you said self-value. In other words, is it simply about sex? Or is it about what we call sexual values, for want of a better expression?
I don't think she connected her body to her partner. I don't think she connected what she does with her body to her life.
You don't think that a character like Laura would connect what she did with her body to
Her life.
the rest of her life?
Because most people who value stuff
Mhm.
like family want their children to grow a certain way. And
Yeah, yeah.
so they wouldn't do these things,
Yeah.
even though it's just her body, it's connected.
Uh-huh, uh-huh.
It's connected to her.
You're saying that Cleve is saying that those who value family life want their children and loved ones to grow up in a certain kind of environment,
Especially with a father, which she doesn't.
especially with a father. And obviously Laura does not want a man around her for too long. Naipaul makes that clear.
It's very contradictory.
Very contradictory.
Focus wouldn't that say that she didn't care then, that her children didn't have a father figure?
Obviously she didn't value, is the point that Naipaul is making through the contradictions and ironies involved in how he depicts Laura, that a character like Laura obviously doesn't value family life really. She wants children, but what does she do to these children? Yes?
So, it's even contradictory when she doesn't want them to grow up like her, but she doesn't structure her life where they can
Thank you.
grow up.
It's contradictory that she doesn't want them, apparently, to grow up the way she did, to live the way she did, because that's why she's so angry
But she
with Lorna's,
father figure.
But she's the only influence that they have.
that with Lorna's pregnancy.
That's why Lauren.
Uh-huh. But you are saying she's the only influence they had because they did not have
The father figure.
a father figure who cared about them and could give them a positive model. Is Naipaul pointing out many, many contradictions
Yeah.
through his depiction of the personality called Laura?
Seems to be okay with
Yeah?
how her life. Because even when she died, she said,
It's better that way. She's saying that it's better for her daughter to give up on life and commit suicide than to live as she has done,
But she knows her life was a problem.
because she knows her life wasn't that great. She dressed it up with all the jokes and the laughter. Yeah? And the funny behavior. But in actual fact, maybe what Naipaul is showing us is that beneath the surface of some people's crazy lives, you know that song, La Vida Loca, The Crazy Life? Ricky Martin,
I never knew what that song meant.
La Vida Loca, Living La Vida
You
Loca,
never really knew what it meant.
The Crazy Life.
You heard it a lot.
Yeah.
I sang that quite a lot.
But in a sense, is the life that Naipaul shows us Laura living, La Vida Loca, the crazy life.
Yeah.
But yet, when Lorna's pregnancy holds up the mirror to that crazy life, what happens? She's not happy.
Who, Lauren or Laura?
Lorna's pregnancy holds up the mirror to Laura, her mother, and shows her the real nature of her life.
She's the reality.
Yes. Question then, my friends. Are all of these characters leading us and voices leading us in the same direction, namely values analysis?
That happens presently too. You don't see how you are until you affect someone else. And her daughter is example.
Sometimes we don't see how we are or what we are doing until we slam into the effect on somebody else and then wham! Surprise. Okay, very interesting point. One more question. Is there another female character? All the heifers need to get the message about love after love. Yes? But did we mention For My Mother, the mother in For My Mother, May I Inherit all her strength, half her strength, not all. Did she need to get this message too about love after love?
Yeah.
Okay. Feast on your life. You're always cooking these wonderful dishes with so little money and so little grocery money for people, for everybody. But now it's time to do another kind of feasting. Enjoy your life. Feast on your life. Okay. Are we then constantly reminded of values? So was Lukács right when he talked about this search for meaning in human life? And basically that search has to do with values analysis. Yes or no? Is that what good writers offer us? Keys to values analysis. Okay, thank you very much. So we're going to finish our poems for next time we meet. Okay. Oh, by the way,
What were the essays?
when we come back. So our exam is on Monday then, because Tuesday when we meet. By the way, quick question. What about the young girls on the island in The Golden Wife? Did they need to hear the message of love after love too and understand that this young man was not beautiful or desirable? Yes or no? So is this a core poem then, Love After Love? Sorry?
It almost concludes those.
The discussion, doesn't it? Thank you very much. It's certainly a core poem. You said almost concludes the discussion. It does have a message, doesn't it, that brings a lot of the other versions of, womanhood together. Thank you very much. So we meet again on Friday, yes? Yes or no?
Yes.
Okay. And I'm bringing back the quizzes, so we press pause.